Today we have gathered the most disturbing and incredible cases that people have filmed in different corners of the planet. Some call them natural phenomena. Others call them warnings. And still others are convinced ancient prophecies are beginning to sound far too modern. In this episode of Top Facts, we are not going to force you to believe in mysticism, but we will show you events that truly make you stop, raise your head, and ask yourself, what if the world is trying to tell us more than we are ready to hear? Not far from Hermosillo in the Mexican Sonora, residents filmed a huge crack that cut through the desert. The fracture stretched through the sand as if the surface of the planet were coming apart at the seams. Geologists attribute this to ground movement, underground waters, soil subsidence, or rock tension. But next to such a crack, scientific terms are not very comforting. The Earth, which we consider reliable, suddenly shows that it is mobile and unpredictable. This is one of the oldest fears of humanity. On the Iranian island of Hormuz, rain colored the water and sand in a rich red color. For eyewitnesses, it looked as if the river had turned into blood. The explanation is earthly. The soils of the island are rich in iron oxide, and during rain, the red dust mixes with the water. But the symbolic effect turned out to be stronger than chemistry. People remembered the story of waters becoming blood and ancient disasters. Nature says nothing in words, but man still hears a message in it. In Tulsa, a shop owner went out to check the weather and saw orange-pink flashes above the clouds. They lasted for about 20 seconds, pulsed, and created a feeling as if something was breathing beneath the clouds. There was no thunder, no ordinary lightning, and no familiar thunderstorm. The glow looked as if the upper layer of reality had become transparent for a moment. Perhaps these were reflections or electrical discharges. But the audience remembered the feeling as if the sky had shown a hidden structure. During a lunar eclipse, people observed how the moon becomes copper red. Such a shade is called a blood moon. It appears when sunlight passes through the atmosphere of the Earth, scatters, and colors the lunar disk. Science explains the process precisely, but the symbolic power remains. In ancient texts, the red moon is connected with warnings and great events. Therefore, every time it rises above the horizon, millions of people remember not physics, but prophecies. A worker was looking down from the height of a building when a smoky spiral appeared in the sky. It emerged suddenly, swirled as if a vortex had opened in the air, and soon disappeared. Such a thing could be the trail of a rocket, a vortex flow, a reflection of light, or the scattering of particles in the atmosphere. But on video, it looked almost like a portal. It is not accidental that viewers spoke of a window between worlds. On Google Earth images, near the southern tip of Patagonia, strange relief shapes were noticed. Upon magnification, they resembled huge serpent heads stretched toward Antarctica. On the network, this place quickly gained a mystical connotation. Versions appeared about ancient structures, giants, forgotten civilizations, and symbols left in the landscape. Skeptics explain the shapes by erosion, shadows, and the tendency of humans to see familiar images in random lines. But Patagonia itself looks like the edge of the world. Therefore, any mystery there becomes more powerful. Even if we just have a relief in front of us, it reminds us. The Earth knows how to create forms that look like a message. On the 13th of November, 2023, footage from Egypt spread across the network. The water in the Nile, according to eyewitnesses, acquired a thick red tint. Scientists could talk about algae, soil particles, pollution, or light features. But for millions of people, this image turned out to be too familiar. In the book of Exodus, the waters of the Nile become red as one of the great warnings. Therefore, Any similar phenomenon precisely in Egypt instantly receives an almost prophetic resonance. A man was walking along a quiet road in Memphis and noticed a small flame right on the asphalt. It did not look like a bonfire or burning trash. The fire held in one place, as if emerging from the road itself. There are several rational versions: a gas leak, fuel residues, a chemical reaction, or a problem with underground utilities. But on the internet, the video was quickly called a road fracture. Commentators spoke of a portal, a crack, and gates into something dark. It sounds fantastic, but fire that appears from the ground always acts on a person more strongly than an ordinary fire. The surface under one's feet must be reliable, and when it suddenly begins to burn, it feels as if something fundamental has been broken. Residents of a small town saw a huge, heavy mass of cloud descending from the sky. It hung so low that it seemed almost like a physical object. People ran out into the street, filmed what was happening, and some, on the contrary, hurried to hide at home. Then, the strangest thing happened. Water seemed to begin stretching out of the cloud. The stream fell down not quite like ordinary rain, and the footage looked as if an invisible force was pumping moisture right out of the sky. A possible version is a local downpour, a waterspout, or a rare form of precipitation. But eyewitnesses admitted that at that moment they had no time for terms. A solar eclipse always acts on people unusually. The day darkens, the temperature changes, birds fall silent, and crowds on the streets look up in almost complete silence. For astronomers, this is the precise mechanics of celestial bodies. For millions of viewers, it is a feeling that someone turned off the familiar order of the world for a minute. In religious texts, the darkening of the sun often neighbors the image of the final judgment and great upheavals. Therefore, when people first discuss the red moon, and then a shadow covers the sun, they involuntarily connect these events into one chain. Sometimes the human mind itself creates a prophecy out of the calendar of nature. In the misty waters of Antarctica, cruise passengers saw the silhouette of an old ship, as if it had stepped out of the past. Its contours seemed battered but recognizable, and the video quickly gained the atmosphere of a maritime legend. In another case, near the Mukilteo terminal in Washington, a large fishing vessel was drifting without a visible crew, light or steering, because of which a ferry was forced to stop. The sea always gives birth to stories about ghosts, because it itself is like a border between worlds. It is easy to get lost there, disappear, and suddenly return in the form of a silhouette in the fog. When the Boeing E-4B Night Watch is noticed in the sky, conversations begin instantly. This airplane is known as an airborne command center, created for crises in which ground infrastructure might find itself under threat. Therefore, its rare appearances inevitably cause anxiety. People ask, is this an ordinary flight, exercises, or preparation for something greater? In reality, such machines exist precisely for scenarios that most people find unpleasant to think about. And in a compilation about strange signs, this item sounds especially cold. Sometimes it is not the sky with clouds that frightens, but the technology that humanity has built in case of its own end. In New York, people saw the sun surrounded by a heavy, dark shadow and an unusual glow. Passers-by stopped right on the streets, raised their phones, and looked upward. The city, which usually does not slow down for a single second, suddenly froze. Scientists explained what was happening by an eclipse and cloudiness, but emotionally, such moments are always perceived more strongly. A person can know the dates of eclipses in advance, understand orbits and calculations, but when daylight changes right above your head, ancient fear wakes up by itself. In one video, a huge swarm of locusts covers a small village. The insects fill the air so densely that the space seems like a living storm. Similar invasions have occurred in different regions, leaving behind damaged fields and anxiety. Scientists explain such outbreaks by weather, humidity, food, and features of insect reproduction. But for the people who find themselves inside the swarm, terms do not help. When there are millions of wings around, it seems as if nature itself decided to show its numbers. Two friends were walking in the evening when they noticed a group of glowing dots in the sky. They held together, forming a strange formation, and did not move like ordinary airplanes. Soon, another eyewitness driving past reported that they had seen the same thing. Possible explanations are drones, satellites, atmospheric reflections, military tests, or an optical effect. But the video did not give a definitive answer. The lights hovered, slowly changed position, and disappeared. On the 9th of February, 2024, in the Indian city of Pune, eyewitnesses filmed a vortex of insects. Dark, rotating columns resembling tornadoes rose above the streets. People hurried inside buildings, and the sky seemed alive. Specialists connected the phenomenon with the Mutha River. Polluted and nutrient-rich water creates conditions for the mass reproduction of insects. Under suitable weather, they gather into huge swarms. But on video, it looks like a small apocalypse. Nature does not always come in the form of an earthquake. Sometimes a cloud of insects is enough for a city to understand. Control over the surrounding world is a very conditional thing. In southern Zamboanga, a passerby stopped to film two fiery objects falling in the night sky almost side by side. They burned brightly, moved quickly, and left the impression of entering the atmosphere. Probably, these could be meteors or fragments of space debris. But it is unknown where they disappeared and whether anything reached the Earth. It is precisely the absence of a finale that gave rise to versions about other objects and hidden observers. One fiery trail can be accepted as an accident. Two side by side already look like an event. And when no one shows the point of impact, the story continues to burn in the imagination of the viewers. Antarctica is a place where even today, it is easy to believe in the unknown. On footage from the icy region, a dark shape was noticed inside an iceberg. Its contours resembled something with branching limbs, similar to tentacles. In the network, versions immediately appeared about an ancient sea creature, an unknown organism, or something extraterrestrial. Scientists would be more cautious. This could be a shadow, rock, cracks, algae, or features of the ice. But Antarctica makes any mystery stronger. Traces of ancient worlds truly remain there, and man has explored far from everything. Residents of Houston noticed a cloud that gradually began to resemble the figure of an angel. The silhouette seemed to hover over the city and then slowly dissolved. Such shots have a simple psychological mechanism. A person is inclined to see familiar shapes in random objects, especially if the shape is connected with hope or fear. But this does not make the experience of the eyewitnesses fake. Sometimes a symbol is more important than origin. If a city raises its heads for a few minutes and sees an angel in the sky, the very fact of a shared gaze already becomes an event. On a street in India, people stopped when reddish-brown smoke suddenly rose from under the ground. It looked as if strong heat broke through from below. There were no obvious works nearby, so viewers began to talk about underground fire and even about a door to hell. Later, workers checked the place, and the ground, according to locals, remained unusually warm for some time. Probable causes could be prosaic: underground utilities, a chemical reaction, smoldering materials. But in person, this looks different. When the street itself begins to smoke, the city suddenly seems like a thin crust over an unknown depth. A video where animals move in a circle always causes anxiety. In one small town, a herd suddenly gathered together and began to walk around one point, as if obeying an invisible rhythm. People remembered stories about the strange behavior of animals before earthquakes and other disasters. Scientists explain such scenes by stress, diseases, herd instinct, fences, or reaction to external stimuli. But the frame still gets on one's nerves. When animals behave in a way we are not used to, an ancient feeling arises. Perhaps they already hear what man is not yet capable of catching. In Chinese Jinan, people saw outlines above the horizon resembling the towers and walls of a huge castle. Scientists call this a fata morgana, a complex mirage due to layers of air of different temperatures. But when a mirage is so detailed, it easily turns into a legend. For eyewitnesses, this was not a term from a textbook, but a city above a city, a silhouette of an invisible world above ordinary streets. Such frames return to us a childhood sense of wonder. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, a man from Dortmund came out of his house and saw a golden glowing shape in the sky. Inside it, small flashes flickered, as if the glow were alive. He began to film, and the video quickly spread across the internet. Someone compared it to atmospheric optics, someone to a heavenly sign, and someone simply admitted that they would not be able to watch such a thing calmly alone. Night shooting always enhances the effect. The city sleeps, the streets are empty, and suddenly something appears over the roof that does not fit into the familiar picture of the world. Above a small town, clouds began to move, and then bright blue lights appeared in the sky. They changed shape as if gathering into a single center, and soon viewers saw a ball with rings around it. For some, it looked like an angelic sign, for others like an energetic object or a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Such scenes are interesting because each viewer completes them according to their inner world. A believer sees a blessing, a skeptic sees optics, a lover of mysteries sees a visit of something unknown. And a good fact is that one and the same frame is capable of dividing people into 3 different realities. In Tel Aviv, ordinary traffic on the streets suddenly slowed down. People stopped, drivers reduced their speed, and a huge living shadow thickened over the road. This was not a storm and not smoke, but a giant flock of starlings. The birds moved as a single organism. They compressed, stretched, changed shape, and seemed to draw invisible signs in the air. Scientists call this murmuration. This is how a flock protects itself from predators and holds together. But if you look at this from below, the explanation does not remove the feeling of anxiety. In antiquity, large flocks were often perceived as harbingers of disasters. And here, it is not the number of birds that frightens, but their incredible synchronicity, as if the sky became a screen for a minute, on which nature showed a warning. In Jerusalem, archaeologists, according to a viral video version, were conducting ordinary excavations, when deep underground, they allegedly discovered a massive ancient chest. Almost immediately, a loud version appeared. This could be the Ark of the Covenant, a holy relic in which, according to biblical tradition, the tablets with the 10 Commandments were kept. There is no official confirmation of such a find, and one must treat such statements cautiously. But the very thought of the return of a lost artifact sounds like a plot that can change history. In one town, people were calmly spending their evening until the sky suddenly flashed red. At first, it resembled the reflection of a distant fire, but then tall crimson pillars appeared in the clouds. They flickered, pulsed, and looked as if the light came not from the earth, but from inside the sky itself. Such a thing can be explained by ice crystals, atmospheric reflections, or electrical flashes. But when the entire street is flooded with a red glow, the mind does not immediately accept a dry version. Since antiquity, a red sky has been connected with war, fire, judgment, and turning point events. Perhaps it was just the physics of the atmosphere. But sometimes physics looks as if someone specially chose the most disturbing color. Not far from a military territory, eyewitnesses filmed bright red flashes in the clouds. They appeared and disappeared, illuminating the sky with uneven impulses. It seemed as if something was moving behind the cloud layer, and the light merely betrayed its presence for a second. When an anomaly occurs next to a closed object, versions appear instantly. Secret tests, unknown technology, an atmospheric experiment, or something more mysterious. Skeptics talk about lightning, signal lights, or reflections. But what alarmed the witnesses was the silence. The flashes disappeared just as suddenly as they had appeared, and people did not receive a convincing answer. And in such stories, it is not only the light that frightens. The silence after it frightens. In Vietnam, during a sudden storm, people saw something that is usually found in ancient legends. Frogs began to fall from the sky. They ended up on roads, roofs, in yards, and near houses. The video quickly went viral because what was happening looked almost impossible. Science knows such cases. A strong wind or a waterspout can lift small animals from a body of water, carry them over a distance, and drop them along with the rain. But even if you understand the mechanism, the sight remains strange. In California, an eyewitness filmed a sunrise over Los Angeles that looked not like the beginning of a day, but like a scene after a catastrophe. Because of thick smoke from wildfires, the sun rose in a heavy orange haze, and the silhouettes of the city became similar to the decorations of an apocalyptic film. The explanation is simple. Smoke particles scatter light and change the color of the sky. But a simple explanation does not make the footage less disturbing. For us, this is one of those cases where mysticism does not even need to be invented. A real warning is already there. In a remote locality, people noticed a green light hovering in the sky. It did not emit a sound, did not flash like an airplane, and did not move like an ordinary drone. The glow slowly changed direction as if it followed a prearranged route. There can be many versions: atmospheric glow, a laser, a reflection, technology, or a camera effect. But to the eyewitnesses, it seemed to be precisely a signal. Not a flash and not a random glare, but a message left above the horizon. In some regions of Australia, the day suddenly became similar to a Martian storm. The blue sky disappeared and streets, houses, and cars plunged into a red-orange, dusty gloom. People went out into the street and did not understand why the familiar world had changed color in minutes. Experts explained this by a powerful cyclone that lifted dust rich in iron oxide into the atmosphere. Simply put, the air filled with particles of rust, which turned sunlight into a red filter. In 2020, residents of one district in China heard a strange sound, which, according to them, came from the mountains and continued for several days. It was sharp, loud, and so unusual that people went out to search for the source but found nothing convincing. Similar sounds were discussed in Sydney as well. Eyewitnesses recorded a hum resembling a trumpet from the sky. Some explain such cases by wind, industrial facilities, acoustic effects, or video editing. Others recall ancient texts where the sound of a trumpet is connected with a great warning. The Euphrates in the area of Syrian Raqqa has become a symbol of anxiety for many. Where there should be a powerful river, dry sections of the bottom, cracks, and bare earth have appeared. For local residents, this is not just a mystical frame, but a real problem. Water is leaving, and along with it, familiar life disappears. The causes can be earthly: droughts, dams, climate change, wars, and water use. But the Euphrates is not an ordinary river. It occupies an important place in religious traditions, and its drying up has long been connected with the expectation of great events. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is one of the most significant places on the planet. Therefore, any strange phenomenon above it immediately causes a huge resonance. On the video being discussed, a glowing ball appears over the sacred complex. It seems to hover in the air and then disappears. Skeptics talk about a drone, a reflection, video editing, or an optical effect. Believers see a sign, protection, or the presence of a higher power. And here, it is not only the light itself that is important, but the place where it appeared. On one of the days, people saw an almost impossible picture. Fish began to fall from the sky. They hit cars, the ground, and roofs, and some were still moving, as if they had been pulled out of an invisible river above the city. The scientific version is again connected with water spouts. A vortex can lift small fish from a body of water and carry them over a great distance. But even understanding this, it is difficult to call a fish rain ordinary weather. During a sunset, tourists noticed a cloud resembling the figure of Jesus. The light around it created a soft halo, and the resemblance turned out to be so strong that people began to film, show each other, and discuss what they saw as a possible sign. Skeptics call this pareidolia. The brain sees familiar shapes in random objects. We recognize faces in stones, animals in spots, and figures in clouds. But sometimes, a coincidence turns out to be too precise for the emotion to disappear. In Tehran, people encountered a frightening phenomenon. A dark rain poured from the sky, leaving oily traces on cars, windows, and hands. Eyewitnesses showed black drops and tried to understand what exactly was falling from above. Versions included pollution, acid rain, industrial emissions, and particles of petroleum products. If the cause is indeed air pollution, then this is not mysticism, but a very earthly anxiety. Above Islamabad, during a severe thunderstorm, a huge dark cloud arose. Lightning illuminated it from within, and the shape seemed so unusual that many spoke not just about the weather, but about a heavenly sign. Meteorologists would call this a powerful cumulonimbus cloud with electrical discharges. And most likely, they would be right. But when a black mass hangs in front of you and a light flashes inside it, scientific words do not immediately comfort. A thunderstorm always reminds man of the scale of nature. And if a cloud folds into a strange silhouette, it begins to look like a presence, even if it is only water, ice, and electricity. Not far from Area 51 in Nevada, a driver noticed dark smoke that hung in the air almost motionless. There was no obvious fire, no strong wind or clear source. The cloud looked as if it had been placed in the sky and left there. Because of the filming location, versions appeared instantly. Military tests, secret technologies, an unknown aircraft, or the trail of an experiment. Rationally, this could be ordinary smoke, caught in a windless layer of air. But near Area 51, even smoke ceases to be ordinary. The reputation of the place works here. The same picture in another district could be quickly forgotten. But near the most mysterious base of America, it turns out into a story. After a severe storm, a man discovered that the surfaces around were covered with tiny black particles. At first, He decided that these were insects, but upon closer examination, they looked more like fine metallic dust that seemed to move slightly. A possible cause is soot, minerals, dust, organics, or particles brought by the wind. Storms are indeed capable of carrying strange mixtures over great distances. But what alarmed the witness was precisely the movement. After sunset over Scotland, a glowing, elongated object appeared. It held almost motionless for several minutes, and it was seen by people from different places. The shape was too even for an ordinary cloud, and too strange for an airplane. Then, the object disappeared. Versions appeared about satellites, drones, atmospheric reflection, and an unknown aircraft. But what struck the witnesses was not only the glow, but a sense of intent. The object did not fly past and did not fall. It simply was present. On the 26th of March, 2026, according to the author of the video, in the area of Fairhope in Alabama, a man noticed an unusual object in a clear sky. At first, he thought it was a balloon, but upon magnification, the shape looked more like a small separate cloud that barely moved. The video became popular on TikTok, and commentators began to talk about a door in the sky and recall ancient lines about the heavens rolling up like a scroll. Skeptics saw an ordinary cloud structure, smoke, an object at a high altitude, or a camera effect. But it is precisely the calmness of the frame that makes it strange. Nothing explodes, flashes, or falls. Just a clear sky and a small anomaly that seems to hang not where it should. One evening, residents saw two bright objects side by side in the sky. One was the ordinary moon, and the second resembled its blurry double. Then, this double began to shift, as if moving along its own trajectory, and soon disappeared. Possible explanations are a reflection in the camera, a lens flare, thin clouds, a satellite, or a drone. But what caught the eyewitnesses was the very idea of a second moon. The moon is one of the most stable landmarks of humanity. We are used to the fact that it is alone. When a similar object appears nearby, the world seems to make a mistake. For a second, it seems that the heavenly rules have changed, and we found out about it last. On the 27th of January, 2012, after a heavy hail, a resident discovered small blue jelly-like balls in the garden. They did not melt, did not dissolve in water, and were not solid. Upon an attempt to take them in one's hands, they broke apart and slipped between fingers. Versions were different: atmospheric pollution, polymer granules, plant particles, or material brought by a storm. But for the eyewitness, it looked like something that fell from the sky without an understandable reason. A group of tourists was sailing on a boat when a long light strip appeared in a clear sky. It stretched over the sea like a road or a bridge, inside of which thin clouds were visible. It was noticed by several people at once. Therefore, the phenomenon was difficult to dismiss as a personal illusion. This could be the trail of an airplane, a difference in humidity layers, a cloud strip, or an optical effect. But visually, it resembled a path opened right in the sky. In the myths of different peoples, there are images of heavenly roads and bridges between worlds. Therefore, such frames act almost instantly. Even understanding the atmosphere, a person still thinks, if this is a road, then who is supposed to walk along it? Near Mocha Island in Chile, a tourist filmed footage on which the surface of the ocean seemed to catch fire. The sea, which should extinguish flames, itself became a source of fire. This looked almost wrong, like a violation of the law of elements. One of the versions is a combustible gas, for example, methane, coming out from the bottom and igniting on the surface. The explanation sounds realistic, but the image does not become weaker from this. A burning ocean is a powerful symbol of an inverted world. And here, one wants to ask not a mystical, but a human question. What is happening to the planet if even water in our frames begins to look like a warning? On the 27th of October, 2025, according to eyewitnesses, residents of Moscow saw a glowing ball that was flying across the night sky and leaving a bright trail. Instead of falling or exploding, the object simply disappeared in the air. Possible versions are a meteor, space debris, or an atmospheric phenomenon. But witnesses were confused by the smooth movement and neat disappearance. It seemed as if the object did not burn up chaotically, but left the field of view too controllably. In the Mission Valley area in Montana, eyewitnesses filmed a dark cloud over snow-covered mountains. A funnel stretched down from it, lifting snow and swirling the air. For a few seconds, it seemed as if the sky was reaching for the ridge. Meteorologists could talk about a local vortex, a snow squall, or complex flows near mountains. But visually, it looked like a scene from a movie. A dark cloud, white peaks, and a thin bridge between them. Sometimes nature does not need to be supernatural to look incredible. A correct place, light, and moment are enough. In Antarctica, there's a place where ice looks as if it is bleeding. Bright red water flows over the white surface, creating an almost frightening contrast. The scientific explanation is surprising in itself. The red color is connected with iron in the salt water that comes out of a subglacial reservoir. When it comes into contact with air, the iron oxidizes, and the stream becomes similar to rust or blood. Even more strange is that microscopic forms of life can exist in such an isolated environment. This is a rare case when an explanation does not destroy a mystery, but makes it deeper. In Oregon, a man was driving along a remote road and noticed flashes of light behind the clouds. They did not look like an ordinary thunderstorm. Light appeared in short impulses, as if something was moving inside the cloud layer and giving a signal. Weather versions include electrical discharges, reflections, and rare atmospheric effects. But to the eyewitness, it seemed that the flashes had a rhythm. And where there is a rhythm, a person almost automatically searches for meaning. Perhaps it was just nature. But the question remains beautiful and disturbing. If the sky really sent us a message, would we be able to distinguish it from ordinary lightning? Residents of one district heard a loud, incomprehensible sound and went out into the street. In the sky, they saw a rectangular shape of light similar to an open door. It held for only a few seconds and then disappeared. Skeptics will suggest a reflection, a searchlight, a cloud gap, a camera effect, or an artificial source. But the rectangular shape makes the story especially strange. Circles, spots, and flashes we are still ready to accept. But a door in the sky looks too intentional. Precisely because of this, eyewitnesses spoke of a portal. Not because they knew the answer, but because human language itself selects this word when it sees a glowing passage where it should not be. In a small district of San Diego, a part of the sky suddenly became a rich green. The glow looked as if a huge source of light had been turned on behind the clouds. Eyewitnesses filmed what was happening and admitted that they had never seen anything like it. On the network, versions appeared about secret experiments, atmospheric tests, and even a connection with CERN, although there are no confirmations of such guesses. More earthly explanations are electrical discharges, transformers, city lighting, reflection from clouds, or camera features. Sometimes the sky looks as if it ceases to be just the sky for a second. According to eyewitnesses, this is precisely what happened in Austin, state of Texas. A golden glow arose over the city. It seemed to push the clouds apart, open an invisible door, and then gather back into a single point. Shortly before this, residents heard rumbling thuds, resembling distant trumpets, from which the earth vibrated. Some called this an atmospheric effect. Others recalled ancient images of opening heavens. And such frames frighten not by the light itself, but by the feeling that we are seeing only a fragment of something greater. On a busy road, people filmed a moment similar to a scene from a disaster film. Thousands of birds filled the sky, swirled over cars, and descended so low that drivers did not understand whether to drive further or brake. Science knows such flocks as murmurations. Birds synchronously change direction, reacting to each other almost instantly. But viewers were struck not only by the numbers. The movement seemed too sharp and collected, as if nature were drawing a warning in the air. In such seconds, even a skeptic asks themselves, is this an instinct or a sign? In another video, clouds swirled as if a giant vortex of light were forming over the Earth. At first, it looked like a game of weather, but then the shape began to resemble a hole behind the cloud layer. Specialists explain such a thing by winds, humidity, lighting, and cloud structure. But millions of viewers saw not meteorology, but a portal, a passage through which something impossible is about to appear. This is how the effect of such videos is born. An explanation may exist, but anxiety after watching remains. San Antonio found itself in the center of attention after reports of a strange object crashing in the area of a parking lot. Eyewitnesses spoke of a bright trail, white fire, and a crater at the site of the fall. For some, it was a meteorite or space debris. For others, a coincidence with biblical images of celestial bodies falling before great events. Especially, people were caught by the traces in the form of a symbol allegedly remaining on the surface. Scientists search for a physical explanation, but imagination works differently. If something falls from the sky, it quickly becomes a warning. In 2025, footage of a glowing cross in the night sky spread across the network. It shone next to the moon, looked too even for an ordinary cloud, and made many speak of a religious sign. Such shapes can appear due to airplane trails, ice crystals, or optical effects. But for those who watched in person, the technical explanation sounded dry. They saw not physics, but a symbol. Faith often begins where a random shape coincides with what a person already carries inside. During the anniversary of the Iranian Revolution, viewers saw a huge figure of Baal engulfed in fire. In ancient myths, this name is connected with the cult of power and idols. Therefore, the footage quickly received a symbolic reading. For some, it was part of a public performance. For others, the site of the fall of old powers before a new era. Fire on a square does not yet prove a prophecy, but visually, it is a powerful scene. A couple went out for a night walk and noticed a soft golden glow in the sky. Upon zooming in with the camera, fiery streams became visible inside the clouds, slowly flowing down and disappearing into the darkness. This could be a reflection, pyrotechnics, an atmospheric effect, or something connected with aviation. But in the frame, everything looked as if the sky were melting and dropping drops of fire. Such videos do not scream about a catastrophe. They are quiet, strange, and therefore disturbing. In northern Israel, the attention of believers was attracted by a red heifer named Melody. In the Jewish tradition, such an animal is connected with an ancient ritual of purification and the theme of the future temple. Therefore, the news quickly went beyond the borders of one village. Some saw a possible sign of messianic times, others reminded that religious requirements are extremely strict. But the fact remains. One animal became a reason for a world conversation about prophecies, history, and the future. Among the dunes of Saudi Arabia, a dark spot was noticed, resembling a lake of black ink. It spread over the sand and formed channels, as if the desert began to bleed oil. Later, it was suggested that this could be crude oil that came to the surface. A desert is associated with dryness and immobility, and here a dark liquid emerges from under it. For some, this is geology. For others, a sign that the planet is releasing what is hidden. A tourist at a waterfall saw an effect that seems impossible. A stream of water did not fall down, but seemed to rise into the air. In fact, a strong wind near high cliffs can tear water away, turn it into fog, and throw it upward. But even knowing this, the sight remains hypnotic. A waterfall is an understandable symbol of gravity. Water falls down. When it violates the rule, the brain perceives the frame as a glitch in the device of the world. A passenger of an airplane over Russia noticed bright dots with trails of smoke in the sky. For several seconds, they moved almost in formation and then disappeared. Official versions in such cases talk about rocket tests, space debris, or fragments of technology. But to viewers, it seemed that the trajectory was too coordinated. It is interesting how quickly a person divides reality into two versions, a rational one and a fantastic one. And the fantastic one often sounds emotionally more convincing. When politicians, religious organizations, and ancient prophecies find themselves in the same field, the attention of the world grows instantly. Discussions of the possible restoration of the Third Temple in Jerusalem touch upon one of the most sensitive points of the planet. For some, this is a sacred hope. For others, a dangerous political topic. In the context of signs of the end of times, the story sounds especially loud. Here it is no longer clouds and light, but religion, history, and geopolitics interwoven into one knot. In Fujian province, a local resident noticed a strange glowing ring in the sky. It hung motionless, did not look like a cloud, and quickly received the name Chinese portal on the network. Scientists could explain such a shape by a smoke ring, lighting, or a trail from some event on the Earth. But eyewitnesses claimed that it looked too even and too alien. There is an almost cinematic effect in this. A black or light ring over a city immediately evokes the thought of a passage. We are so used to the language of science fiction that sometimes the real sky begins to speak to us precisely in its images. A traveler in a remote area noticed that the sun became thickly red, and a glowing ring arose around it. In itself, such a picture can be connected with dust, smoke, humidity, or atmospheric scattering. But then, according to eyewitnesses, low sounds resembling trumpets rumbled in the sky. And right here, an ordinary sunset turns into an event with a religious tint. A red sun, a circle of light, a rumble in the sky. All this too easily folds into an image of a warning. Personally, in such stories, what catches me most is not mysticism, but how quickly nature knows how to make a person feel small. In December 2024, over Tulsa, according to eyewitnesses, something appeared resembling a grid of glowing blue squares. The pattern did not hold long, about 20 seconds, but looked so even that people compared it to a secret construction behind the clouds. Perhaps it was a projection, a reflection, or a rare combination of light and a cloud layer. However, visually it was a very strong phenomenon. Not chaotic flashes, not lightning, but precisely order. And order in the sky frightens more strongly than chaos, because it makes one think as if someone's intent stands behind it. When the moon colors in a copper-red color, even people far from religion freeze for a second. During a total lunar eclipse, the Earth blocks sunlight, and the atmosphere passes predominantly red shades to the moon. Science explains this beautifully and precisely, but ancient texts saw in the red moon a sign of great changes, and this symbolism has not disappeared anywhere. Therefore, every such frame simultaneously exists in two worlds, the astronomical and the prophetic. And perhaps precisely the combination of science and ancient fear makes the blood moon one of the strongest heavenly images. Near a shopping center, people noticed how clouds began to gather into a dark, rotating spot. At first, it resembled the birth of a tornado, but then the shape became similar to a hole or a funnel in the sky. Eyewitnesses called it a black hole, a portal, and stargate. Meteorologists usually search in such cases for signs of a vortex, air instability, or unusual cloudiness. But the crowd in the parking lot does not see graphs and does not see pressure maps. It sees a hole above its head. And when the sky looks as if a wound appeared in it, explanations begin to sound already after the fear. In Florida, a man was walking home at sunset and noticed a bright round object above the sun. At first he thought it was the moon, but the real moon was in another direction. Then versions appeared about Venus, Jupiter, a glare, an optical effect, or a reflection in the camera. But for the eyewitness, something else was more important. An extra object appeared in the familiar picture of the sunset. Such moments break the automatism of perception. You look at the sky every day and are sure that you know where the sun should be, where the moon should be, and where the planets should be. And then a dot appears that seems not to have asked permission to be there. On a beach in Phuket, an eyewitness noticed a giant misty shape in the water, resembling a human foot, as if someone invisible had lowered a foot onto the surface of the sea. Waves began to swirl strangely and retreat, enhancing the impression. Later, a strong earthquake shook the region, and viewers connected the footage with the ancient image of a messenger, standing with one foot on the sea and the other on the earth. Perhaps it was a play of fog, waves, and perspective. But the coincidence with underground tremors made the story much more powerful. Sometimes an event becomes a sign, not at the moment of filming, but after the world around it changes. After a mass in Naga City in the Philippines, believers saw a white, elongated shape in the clouds. To many, it reminded the figure of Jesus, with outstretched hands and long strands similar to hair. The video quickly spread because the moment occurred next to a religious event, among thousands of people who came to pray. A skeptic will say that clouds often take familiar outlines, and will be right. But for those who stood there with a candle in their hands, this was not an exercise in recognizing shapes. This was a personal experience in which the sky became part of a prayer. In Canada, witnesses noticed a long, glowing object in the sky, resembling a rod. Around it, a field seemed to flicker, and smoky trails stretched from both ends. The object remained visible for a short time, and then gradually disappeared. There can be many versions: a rocket fragment, an airplane trail, a meteor, an optical illusion, or a rare combination of light and clouds. But the shape was so unusual that viewers were in no hurry to accept simple answers. Some frames catch not by scale, but by geometry. A ball, a cross, a ring, a rod. The human brain instantly turns a shape into meaning. In April 2013, a driver on a quiet road in Russia noticed a strange green glow above the horizon. It did not look like an ordinary reflection from the ground, and more resembled a light hidden behind the clouds. Perhaps it was the northern lights, a reflection of an industrial source, an atmospheric effect, or a camera feature. But the absence of a clear explanation made the video durable. It is still perceived as a small mystery from the past. And this is an important point. Mystical videos rarely die if at least one unanswered question remains in them. In York, cyclists noticed long convex lines on the path that appeared as if suddenly. In dry weather, they seemed harmless, but in the dark or after rain, they became almost invisible and dangerous. Some people fell, riding onto them with wheels. This is not a heavenly sign and not a mystical portal, but precisely such details show that the strange can be very close, on an ordinary route. Sometimes, it is not the grandiosity of a phenomenon that frightens, but its incomprehensible origin. A road along which you rode every day suddenly changes and begins to behave like a trap. In Haryana, India, people were standing by a river when a large section of the surface suddenly rose out of the water. For a few seconds, it seemed as if something from below was pushing upward and a huge creature was about to appear. Possible explanations include underground pressure, gas movement, ground displacement, or the surfacing of a soil section saturated with water. But for the eyewitnesses, this was a real moment of anticipation. The water trembles, the ground rises, everyone looks and does not know what will happen next. On Baikal, people filmed how a huge ice sheet began to move slowly toward the shore. Thick blocks cracked, crawled onto each other, and advanced forward with a crunch. This well-known natural phenomenon can be connected with wind, currents, temperature expansion, and ice movement. But it looks as if the lake is waking up and pushing out its frozen armor. Baikal's already perceived almost mystically. The deepest lake, ancient water, endless ice. Therefore, a frame with advancing ice seems not just beautiful, but alive. In Iran, a man was filming a moment when a dark liquid with the smell of crude oil began to emerge from the ground next to an automated teller machine. For passers-by, it looked incredible. In the middle of a city street, the surface seemed to open up and release what is usually hidden deep underground. Probably the cause could be connected with underground utilities, a leak, or features of local oil layers. But symbolically, the scene is almost perfect. A person comes for money, and the earth nearby begins to give away black gold. Sometimes reality itself creates metaphors that a scriptwriter would find difficult to invent better. The region of Mount Ararat has long been connected with searches for the legendary Noah's Ark. Recently, attention was again attracted by a massive shape in the earth, resembling the outlines of an ancient vessel. Proponents of the version talk about scans, layers of soil, and structures similar to compartments. Skeptics reply that this could be a natural geological form created by erosion. But the story of the Ark is so deeply embedded in culture that any similar contour instantly becomes a world event. People search not just for wood or stone, they search for proof that an ancient tale was once a reality. A YouTuber was driving along a remote road in a Siberian forest and filming the scenery when a large glowing sphere appeared between the trees. It was located low, almost near the ground, did not emit a sound, and for a few seconds seemed to simply observe. Then, the recording cut off, which only enhanced the effect. Perhaps it was an object on the road, a reflection, a light source, video editing, or a rare natural phenomenon. But a forest adds a special atmosphere to such frames. In a city, we search for wires, lanterns, and signs. In the dense taiga, any light seems alien because it seems to have nowhere to come from. In Japan, they filmed a section of land that rose and fell, as if a huge lung were located beneath it. The soil moved rhythmically, up, a pause, down, and again. Probably a similar effect can appear due to water, air under roots, pressure in the ground, or the movement of a loose layer. But the name breathing earth stuck immediately, because it perfectly describes the feeling. We are used to thinking of the planet as a solid foundation, and not as a living body. And when the surface begins to move under one's feet, this familiar confidence disappears. Almost at a depth of 4,000 feet, researchers filmed a rare jellyfish, Halitrephis masi. In the darkness of the ocean, it looked like a transparent dome, and then flashed with pink, yellow, and blue shades, like a firework underwater. This item differs from the rest. Here one does not need to search for a sign of the end of times. It is enough to recognize that the Earth itself still stores beauty similar to an extraterrestrial one. And for me, This is one of the strongest moments of the entire compilation. We so often look into the sky in search of wonders that we forget. Beneath us, there is an entire universe where man has almost not reached. During a severe thunderstorm in Georgia, a student was filming flashes from a dorm balcony. At some point, lightning struck exactly into a pointed top of a building or a tower, and the entire construction flashed for a fraction of a second. Physics explains this simply. Tall and sharp objects indeed more often become points of discharge. But the video looked so precise, as if the sky specially chose the target. Precisely such frames perfectly conclude this story. Almost every phenomenon can be explained, checked, and broken down into causes. But while a person looks at a flash cutting through the night sky, an ancient feeling still wakes up inside. Perhaps the world is much more mysterious than we are used to thinking. All these frames are united not by proof of the end of the world, and not by a ready answer to the question of what is happening to the planet. They are united by something else. They make us look attentively again. The sky, the earth, the water, the ice, animals, and even city streets sometimes behave as if familiar reality gave a crack. A part of these phenomena is explained by science. A part requires verification. A part, possibly, will turn out to be an error, video editing, or a coincidence. It is not necessary to believe every video to feel the scale of the world. It is enough to recognize. Reality still knows how to surprise. Write in the comments which case seemed to you the most disturbing. The bloody river, the door of light, the red moon, or something else. And if one day such a sign appeared right over your city, would you immediately search for a scientific explanation? Or would you at least for a second believe that the sky is indeed trying to warn us?